We're going to learn how to filter data in this lesson. Now, filter is in more than one place on the menus. If you're in the home menu, filter is over here. Sort and filter are both here. And if you're on the data menu, you've got filter right here by sort. And I believe they have it in two places because filtering and sorting, you might want to do at the same time, and then you don't have to jump back and forth between menus. But let's go to the home menu. Now what filter allows you to do is exactly what it says. You can filter the data. So let's select the header row, and you can select it like this by clicking on the number and you get the entire row. If it's short, you might just go like this, but if you've got a big file with lots of rows, it's easier to just do it this way. And then come down here and select filter. Now see what that does, it gives you this little pull down menu on each of the headers. And if you click on that menu, you see everything that is in that column. So this is the race column. We've got B, H, and W, and they're all checked. If you click the select all box, the checks all go away, and then you could choose one of them at a time. Clicking changes it from checked to unchecked and vice versa. You can check them all, uncheck them all, check them one at a time. And then what this filter does, if we check white and say OK, it filters your list on everyone where the race is W. And if you look down here in the bottom left corner, it tells you how many records meet your filter criteria. So here we know we've got 9 with race W out of 20. If we want to see how many H, 6 out of 20 are H. And then put them all back on, select all. Now you can filter more than one thing at a time. Sometimes you filter more than one thing without realizing that's what you're doing. So it's always a good idea. This is what I do, because you should always not trust yourself that you're not going to make a mistake. So protect yourself from mistakes. Let's say I have this filtered. I filter on female, and I go away and get some coffee, and I come back and I forgot that I filtered on female, and I've got a huge data set that's the entire school. You might have something filtered and not remember, and then filter on something else. And then here you might think, oh, we only have 2 with race B, because you forgot that you filtered on gender. Now this gets dangerous when you've got lots of data and lots of variables. So you should just always be in the habit, before you filter, clear the filters. See over here on the filter is, when something's filtered, you have the option, I'll filter something here. Let's filter. And now because we have something filtered, we have the option of clearing. That way you don't have to remember. And you can tell what's filtered by the little icon shows up on the pull down menu. But when you've got a lot of data and a lot of variables, and when it's filtered, it still looks like a lot of data, it can be really dangerous to not start each time with clear the filters. I added a column here so I could show you another way to filter. And since I just added this column, it doesn't have the pull down menu. So I need to select the header row. I'll turn the filters off, and then I'll turn them back on. And now my new column has a filter. Now here I put level scores. These would be like the math EOGs or EOCs. And let's say I want to filter, well, you could filter on, I want to see everyone who got a 2. It tells me down here 4 of 20 kids scored a 2, and this is them. But I might also want to see well, since it's so few numbers, I could just click whatever I want. If I want to see who scored above grade level, I can do it this way by just 3, 4, and 5 are grade level proficient. Or what I could have done, since these are numbers, you can come over here and I could say, I want to filter on anything that is greater than or equal to 3. And it'll filter that way. And that's a handy thing to use when you've got more than just the 5 numbers here. You might want to filter on a number, anything that exceeds. You can also see the other choices. We could have had top 10, above average, filter less than or equal, between, does not equal, etc. You can also type in the search bar and to find, sometimes that's handy to find someone's name, like over here. When you're dealing with like an entire school and you want to find all the Joneses, there probably are no Joneses in this, but if you type that in there, it would, you could click and it would show them all. Now, I left this filtered so I could remind you before we filter something else. Let's clear the filters. There we go. They're clear. And I want to show you something that is very handy to know. Here, if you let people type in open-ended data for, this is what math class the students are in. And if you have a form that someone is typing into and different teachers are typing, and you let them just type any way they want to, this is what you're going to end up with. Math 1, Math Roman numeral 1, Common Core Math 1, Mathematics 1, etc. See, the problem when you go to filter, those are all being seen by the computer as different classes. So what you can do, there's a couple ways to fix this. If you get data that's already like this, you can look at this list, and this is every way that the data got entered. You can select Mathematics 1, Math Roman numeral 1, Math 1, Common Core Math 1. These are all the same. And then what you might want to do is write Math 1 over here and pull it down or copy paste, and we're going to replace this data with this data so that it all matches. So we got all our Math 1s. Now 8th grade math and grade 8 math. And let's write that grade 8. And we pull that little box, or you could copy paste if you have trouble getting a hold of that little box there. And now let's clear the filter and make sure that it happened correctly. Oh, look, we missed somebody. Oh, it was a Math 2. We can take care of that. Math 2. And then I'm just going to make this the math class, a math course, and I'm going to get rid of this data because you can't do anything with this data because it's a mess. So I will delete that. And if I'm okay with this variable being here, that's fine. Otherwise, I could cut it and insert it over here so it's back to where it used to be. Now, we did something a minute ago that we should never do. We changed the original data without making a copy. That should always be the first thing that you do. I'm going to make a copy right now. Hold down the Control key and pull it over, and this will be my copy. Now, I changed this course data to make it all standard, and I should not have done that before making a copy. So just let that be something that you try to remember. Copy your data before you do anything, because you just never know how you might mess it up. Now I want to show you how you can be proactive, because a lot of data comes in messy, because a lot of data is keyed in freehand by a lot of different people. And if you've got data that's going into a spreadsheet, say you give every teacher a similar spreadsheet and ask them to fill it out with certain information, if you get it back and the math courses are written 6 different ways, the school name is written 12 different ways, it can just be so messy to work with. So let me show you a way that you can be proactive to keep that from happening. Now this is called data validation. Let's say you're going to put the school name in column H. And every teacher in the school is going to get this spreadsheet to fill out. Well, let's take column H, and we're going to do something to proactively keeping them from writing the school name 15 different ways. You go to the Data tab, and right here is Data Validation. So we'll select Data Validation. We've got column H. If you know how far down your data is going to go, you can select just that. Or if you don't know, go ahead and select the whole column. And then we'll have to unvalidate the school name, the header. And so when we click on Data Validation right here on the Data tab, here's where we can restrict what they can put in here, and it'll make a pull-down list. What we want to do is allow a list. And I'm going to show you 2 different ways to do this, because depending on how many things are in your list, you might prefer one way over the other. So let's say there's just 2 schools, and teachers in 2 different schools are going to get this list. Lincoln Elementary, comma, Washington Elementary. They're taking math 2 in elementary school here. Elementary. The message, you can leave this blank if you want, but you can put a message here. We'll just say school name. Error alert. This is what will come up if they try to type something else in here. So let's say use the pull down menu. So let's see how this works. Now anytime you click on this cell, you get a pull down menu with those 2 names in it. And not only do the teachers not have to type, but the entries are going to be exactly the same. They're not going to type Lincoln EL, Lincoln LM. This controls what they put in here. You might recall before I showed how to do the data validation that I mentioned that because we selected the entire column, the header row was also going to get that data validation. And we don't want Lincoln or Washington Elementary in the header row. It needs to say school name. But let's say you decide later you just want it to say school instead of school name. So you go to type it, and it won't let you because there's validation in that cell. And here's where you get the message that we wrote. Use the pull down menu, and you can retry all you want, but you're not going to be able to write anything except Lincoln Elementary or Washington Elementary in there. So your header row, we did the entire column just to save space, like if you don't know how far down you need to go. Now we'll take the validation out of the header row. So we just select that header cell and go here and clear all. And now we can write in here because there's no validation in that cell, but it's in every other cell below here. And if they try to, it's going to autofill if they start to type, say, Lincoln, they might Lincoln ES for Lincoln Elementary School. It won't let them use the pull down menu. But it probably will well, if they try to type, it'll autofill to something that's on there. So this makes it so that you're likely to get much cleaner data that is a lot easier to work with. Now, I mentioned there's another way to do this, and let's say that you're going to give this to 45 schools and ask the teachers to complete this, and they need to write their school name in here. You don't want to list 45 school names in that tiny little bar in the data validation window. So here's another way to do this. I added a sheet by clicking that and put the list of the school names here. And I just put 5, but let's, you might have 105 names or something. You list the names here. And then over here, we're going to do data validation. And we say we want to allow a list. But instead of typing the list of names that will be in the pull-down menu with commas between them, click in here for the source. But then we're going to go over here to sheet 3. And I'm just going to select my list. And then it writes for me equals sheet 3 from A1 to A5. And that's what this, we could have written that ourselves, but you don't need to know how. You can just go over here, select it, and let's give it an input message. No, we don't need a message, but let's give an error alert. You can make this say whatever you want. Use the menu. You can put their names in here if you know who's going to make a mistake. Okay, now everything on that list is here. And now what we could have done, and sometimes this is a good idea, if you have a pull-down menu list, but you're not sure exactly, like there could be names being added to the list later, you can make the data validation go beyond and include these blank cells, and then when you fill them in, those things will show up on the list. Just depending on what kind of data and what you're doing, sometimes. So this unit was about filtering, but the reason why we showed you about data validation is because if you know ahead of time that different people are going to be typing into a spreadsheet, or you're going to pull together several different spreadsheets that different people entered the data into, you want to set up data validation so you don't end up with the filtering problems that we had before we changed these.